Welcome everyone to OPSAWG here at IETF 123. I hope everyone is doing well. It's Thursday, so you're probably all very tired. I get it. So hopefully we'll make this interesting. We've got, surprisingly, a short agenda, and I say short, relatively speaking, because one, we are no longer coupled with the ops area. So this is uniquely our meeting, and two, we just didn't have a lot of people present. So if we have time, we have 30 minutes set aside for some open discussion. Oh, by the way, hi, I'm Joe Clark. I'll be one of your hosts, my co-host Benoit Klez. With me always, welcome. This is, as all the other working groups, an IETF meeting. As such, it is covered by the note well. Being Thursday, I'm sure you've read all of this, but just know that your contributions are covered by this, and anything you say at the mic on the mailing list also covered by the note well. Also note really well, this is an organization of respect. I really love how Lou says this in NetMod. Some things can get heated in terms of technical discussions, but it is about the technical details. It is about the work. We should treat each other with respect, and we should try to see the other person's views so that we are coming at this to make a better technical solution all around. We use MeetEcho here, MeetEcho. I know I'm getting it wrong, and they're going to laugh at me in the knock later. That includes remote participation. Obviously, they need to use it. And even here, if you're on site, to get into the mic queue, please virtually raise your hand in the tool and come up to the mic then to speak. If you are in the room and you are using the full MeetEcho tool, please mute your audio and your microphone so there's no feedback. And we did do an audio test for Tal, who will be presenting remotely. Tal, you sounded good, but make sure during your presentation, if you do have an external headset with a microphone, that you're using that so we can hear you as clearly as possible. We do have the agenda up online. We did make some last-minute changes to it, and we'll go over that when we get there. Based on some things our AD asked us to. Hopefully you did prepare. If you're remote or if you're here, you know how to get in. You managed to find the door and you're in the meeting. As I said, I'm Joe. This is Benoit. We do have a shared minutes tool. It's called HedgeDoc. I put the link in the chat, so did Benoit. Rob Wilton is no longer here with us in this room. He's found a better working group to attend, I guess. So we do need help with those minutes. So please, if you can, I've already pasted the agenda in there so you can just find the slot. And you don't have to say what's being said on the slides. Just cover what people say when they come up to the microphone. We have the materials, all the slides have been posted online, and if you're using the MeetEcho tool, you have access to the chat room, and both Benoit and myself are watching that as well. We published 2 RFCs. One is a best current practice as of since IETF 122. Those are both MUD related, but we have since sent all of the in-flight MUD work over to IoT Ops. The RFC queue list is a little bit incomplete. Things are radically and rapidly in flight, which is great. I mean, we are moving a lot of work through OPSAWG, and that's good. We are getting good feedback from the IETF as a whole, and the authors are being very responsive on these drafts. So we do expect the work that you see in the RFC editor queue, as well as the work with the IESG to progress rather rapidly. One thing not listed here because it just recently happened on the working group last call front, the PCAP, the historic version of the PCAP, the PCAP NG is still to be is still a working group item, but the historic version is now in working group last call. We extended that for 3 weeks into early August, so I do encourage you to read the PCAP draft and provide feedback on the list. And then there are 7 other working group, well, maybe 6 at this point, other working group drafts, some of which will be discussed today. Again, IoT, in terms of MUD, IoT Ops has received all of our MUD work, and Benoit and I were active on this between 122 and now. Some of you may have noticed we've rechartered. No longer does it say things like S&P and CAPWAP in our charter, or MIBS. Well, we actually have milestones that correspond to work we're doing. This was a novel idea for us. And so I've highlighted a few words up there. So we are kind of a dispatchy role, maybe an ops, but we're not here to pick up working group, we're not here to pick up work where a working group just wasn't, it just wasn't deemed fit for another working group. But we will help find where work might need to happen, or if there's work that just doesn't warrant a working group of its own, that work may find a home here as well. But we want to make sure that anything we're adopting, Benoit said this very well, I think, at the Onion side meeting, that there are people willing to put in the investment. And investment means time, and time translates into money. So people are willing to put some skin in the game to get the work done. So that's what we're going to focus on as a working group. Some examples of this, things like the IP fix work. We've been seeing a lot of that come through here. I highlighted this because that's a wee bit old at this point. Network or service level Yang modules. For right now, this is the place. That could change as the layers of onions unfold. And then there's also talk about tooling as well, where that may end up. But we have seen some of that work that's right now in the RFC editor queue fits very nicely here. Others have fit nicely here, and maybe in the future we might need to update and recharter a little bit again as we see more of the working group progression in ops. Want to add anything?
Yes, please. So I want to add a couple of thoughts on reviewing and progressing documents. We are somehow a special working group because at the same time we do IP fix, we do network and service, we do encapsulation, PCAP, we do a little bit of everything, which means that somehow it's difficult to get like reviewers for documents. And we understand this because that's the specific of this working group. People come for their document. The issue we have as chairs is the following, is that if everybody comes just with documents, and whenever they receive feedback from someone, that person is added as author, well, who's left to do the review? So we arrive to like Oikoblast call, and then there is not many people who are there to give reviews. So I think this is a shared responsibility between the chairs, but also the author to get people to get the reviews, right? To find people to get the reviews. So, and it goes in both directions. It's like, okay, I review your draft, can you review mine? Whatever way, right? But this is also something I wanted to stress here, because whenever we arrive at last call, then what? What should we conclude? Thank you.
I've just recently learned whiskey works very well with Benoit if you need him to review some. I couldn't think of a better way to state it. No, I didn't just learn that. It was reinforced, let's say. With that, we'll ask about bashing in a second. So you've just heard our introduction. We're going to go into guidelines for characterizing OAM. This will be a remote presentation by Tal. Applying cozy signatures for Yang data provenance, information data models around packet discard, Yang model for network diagnosis, and scheduled sequences of OAM tests, IP fix alternate marking, export of SRv6 path segment identifier information in IP fix, export of gigabit passive optical network encapsulation in IP fix. This next item is new. New as of yesterday. Eric Klein will talk to us on ACAS on orbit, Outernet Council Interconnect API. This was asked by Med, and we had plenty of agenda time, so this is going to be an interesting presentation that we'll get from Eric. And then Med or Mahesh, I don't know which, Mahesh will talk to us on Yang development process and maintenance. Veloz. See, Veloz? Veloce, okay. Okay, so we'll hear about that, another interesting draft on how Yang development might evolve in the IETF. And then, as I mentioned, we might have some time for some open discussion. Any bashing needs to happen here? I don't see anyone in the queue. So with that, let's go to our first presentation on characterizing OAM. Yep. Let me remove that.
Hi, I'm Tal Mizrahi, and I will be presenting on behalf of my co-authors, Carlos and Adrian. Okay, great. Looks like I have control over the slides. Okay, so actually we've already presented this this week in IEPPM, so apologies if you've already seen these slides. And basically the goal of this draft is to provide guidelines of how to characterize or classify OEM protocols, mechanisms, and specifically with respect to the terms in-band and out-of-band. One of the goals was to find a potential alternative for these terms because these terms in-band, out-of-band have been used in various RFCs, but not necessarily in a consistent way. One thing which is not a goal of this draft is we don't intend to go back to existing RFCs and change the terminologies of these existing RFCs. We're looking forward and we're trying to provide terminology which will be used in RFCs from now on. Okay, so the status of this document, basically it went into working group last call in October. And since then, in IETF 122, there was a little bit of discussion, and the situation was that there were still outstanding comments from Tim, Benoit, and Greg. And what we've done since then is, first of all, I joined as a co-author. We did a major revision of the draft. We did a lot of changes. We did several iterations with each of the reviewers. And I want to thank especially Greg, who met us this week, and we did some offline discussions, and I think we had some progress. And that's in addition to the several reviews and several iterations. So thanks for that. A summary of the main changes since IETF 122 and what we have right now. So first of all, the scope of the document was kind of reduced because we wanted to focus on the classification of OEM terminology, of OEM mechanisms. So some of the content was removed, some of the content which was not exactly within the scope, within the focus. And in addition to that, we added a lot more examples, more clarifications based on the comments we received. And also, since the draft defines several criteria for classifying OEM, there's now a section defining how to use these multiple criteria together. Regarding existing terminology of active, passive, and hybrid OEM, there's an explicit language which emphasizes that we're not changing existing terms which were defined previously in RFC 7799. We're just using them as is and adding some additional terminology. And there's also some new text that emphasizes the importance of equal forwarding treatment of OEM. So we mentioned OEM classification a couple of times. Let's see what we mean by that. And specifically, we have in this draft, we defined 3 different criteria for classifying OEM. One, which we see on the left here, is based on the terminology from RFC 7799, active, passive, and hybrid. And these terms are used in exactly the same way as they were defined in that RFC. But in addition to that, we're adding a new term, which is in-packet OEM, which is a subset of hybrid OEM. And this is a new term which is defined specifically in this document. We're currently considering of maybe changing that term. So stay tuned for that. In addition to that, in the middle, we have a second criterion, which is whether the OEM follows the same path as the data traffic that it intends to monitor. And the third criterion, which we see on the right-hand side, is whether OM receives the same forwarding treatment as data traffic or not. So these are basically the three criteria. For example, if we take IP ping, which is based on ICMP messages, basically ping is active according to the leftmost criterion. It's not necessarily path congruent because ICMP doesn't necessarily follow the same path as the data traffic that we want to measure. And it's not necessarily equal forwarding treatment. It might receive different treatment than data traffic. So that's what we have for IP ping. Another example is IOM. And in this example, we're talking about a trace option, which is incorporated into a data packet. And in this case, on the leftmost criterion, we have in-packet. And again, in-packet is a subset of hybrid. So in fact, IOM is hybrid, and it's also in-packet, which is more specific. And since it's incorporated into data packets, it's also path congruent and equal forwarding treatment. So these are just a couple of examples. There are a few more examples in the draft. You're welcome to read and send your comments. And actually, this week in IPPM, we received several more comments regarding the draft. So what we plan to do probably in the next week or two is to have another revision based on the comments we received this week. Nothing major, in my opinion, but still we plan to have a revision. But I think other than these comments, which are relatively not major, I think the document is pretty much ready. That's how the authors feel. And we'll probably within the next revision, which will take place in the next week or two, we hope to be able to proceed to the next step. Any comments or questions would be welcome.
Greg?
Yes. Hi, Greg Erickson. Yes, as Tal updated you, we had a very good discussion with Adrian and Tal, where I think that we clarified many points, and we agreed on plan forward. So we'll proceed, and then one point, note, comment that I would like to make is, yes, I agree that active OEM methods, and as ICMP is one of them, are not natively guaranteed to be path congruent and receive the same forwarding treatment. But at the same time, we cannot characterize them as inherently non-topologically congruent following the same path and not inherently receiving the same forwarding treatment. So it all depends. So
right.
saying that any active method by its design cannot follow the same topology, it cannot receive the same treatment, I think that's a big misstatement. The thing is that, yes, it's a challenge to ensure that these packets, especially when this particular method is used for performance monitoring of their particular data flow, that ensuring that they follow the same path and receive the same treatment, and they're in different data planes that can be achieved by different means. But something that needs to be considered to receive and obtain useful observation information. But say that ICMP ping or IP ping by its nature characterized as non-congruent and not receiving the same forwarding, that I think that's a misstatement.
Right. So I want to clarify what I meant by that was that when we use ping with ICMP, it's not guaranteed that it will follow the same path as the data traffic. it's not guaranteed that it will receive the same treatment. So when we say non-path congruent, we don't mean that it necessarily uses a different path. It just means that it's not guaranteed that it will follow the same path. We didn't take any special care to make sure that it follows the same path.
Well, I think that for the sake of this document, especially since we are trying to leave some useful guidance for people that are trying to understand OAM, we need to emphasize that, yes, it's not guaranteed, but that doesn't mean that because of that, active OAM belongs in this category.
Okay, I see your point. Yeah.
So, Tal, question to you. So, do we have this sentence in the draft that says that basically any active method, with any active method, we cannot guarantee, because we use that term multiple times, that it's path congruent and equal forwarding? Then, as a consequence, that's why you qualify it as, non-path congruent. And
I'm not sure that I agree with the statement that every active method is necessarily non-path congruent. We can define an active method, which is path congruent and equal forwarding treatment. For example, we talked about VCCV as an example of a mechanism which is active and is path congruent. So that's defined as that's mentioned as an example in the draft.
Okay, thanks.
So I understand that from this slide that the document is not ready. So there is another revision, which is, I would say, need to be spent to take into account, I would say, the outcome of the discussion that you had recently with Greg. So I don't have any, I would say, specific comment about this other than a big thank you to you, Tal, for accepting to, I would say, working on this and joining this effort, and also working with Greg and Carlos and Adrian to reach out to, I would say, an agreement. This is really appreciated, and thank you for all the work you are doing on this.
Thanks.
Well said. Thank you.
Thomas here. Hi, Tal. Just one clarification question so that I can follow your conversation with Greg. So when we talk about path congruency, does it mean it follows exactly the same ECMP path treatment? Is that correct?
Right. Yeah, exactly. The same path as the data that we intend to measure or to monitor. Yes.
So, for instance, if ECMP takes the 5-tuple into consideration for the hashing, if we have the same 5-tuple, it will be path congruent, right?
Right, but ICMP by definition doesn't have the same 5-tuple as TCP traffic or quick traffic or whatever.
Exactly. Understood. Yes. Thanks.
Right.
I took myself out of the queue. You answered the question. Thanks, Tom.
Thanks.
Anything else? Any other comments? Okay. Thank you, Tal, and I echo thanks to the authors and all the contributors for working on this. Jose. I think it's you.
We have a problem with the pronunciation. I have always heard it is Cosi, not Cose. So and veloce is Italian. If you go Spanish, it would be veloce, but that's another. But the word sounds totally Italian. Well, this is an update of the draft that we have been working on Yang provenance and how to use signatures based on COSI. And well, news is that the draft was adopted after Bangkok. Since then, there are two versions, and those two versions are mostly try to address the comments we receive basically during the adoption call. And well, since we are working on a reference implementation, the idea is that the experience we are gaining while with this reference implementation has been incorporated as well. So basically, main changes in order of how they appear in the document, are the discussion on application scenarios, the clarification on how to process provenance signatures, though that's not totally clear yet, and we will talk about this later on. We have updated since Jan push notification. The envelopes have changed the format. We have updated it. Taking this opportunity, we dedicate some time to complete the different Jan modules and to find Diana considerations. And we have added some extra security considerations, especially when it comes to how trust is built. And well, the examples for sure has been updated, as well as in the case of the rest of the text has changed. So with the introduction basic issues, something that we're discussing is those we are not identifying clear use cases, so we have we decided to talk about the main three that we can foresee. That's something that, well, let's see if basically we are very much focused right now on the first one, on the telemetry and monitoring data. But when it comes to how you can guarantee the integrity of a device configuration, of how you can identify that the orchestration mechanisms are suspected and are behaving, and you can keep a proper account of what's going on. What we have saying, we have added is a clear mention of how the processing is about that type, the new type that is defined inside the draft, that is provenance signature. So provenance signatures is what you have to process for dealing with provenance signatures. That's but for us it was something that sounded evident, but apparently it was not. So we made it explicit, and we go in a little bit more of detail with the processing rules, precisely to clarify this as well. When it comes to updates, in all the, for those of you who have read the document, we talk about 4 different inclusive methods where the signature can be included depending on which are the goals. The first one is augmenting a schema for having the provenance signature. We have made an explicit mention to this. It seems not to be very clear, and that was on the list. After the hackathon, a mail from Jan that is not here. Analyzing this, I think, I have not understood totally what Jan was asking for, or he has not understood what is written, so we had to dedicate some time to clarify this. Second is that everything around Jan push notification was updated according to the updated schema. There now is an extension on the notification envelope, and everything has been updated accordingly by someone that understands much better than me the envelope. So that's something that we're happy, because it has helped us as well to identify how to build the other modules, etc. We have defined the Jan module that has to be used in the case of the instance data, of the data at rest in a file. And we have made an update on the namespace in the case of annotations. The IANA security considerations have been completed with the Jan modules that are proposed, and on the security considerations that we receive a couple of comments on this. So we have trying to go in a little bit more detail. One is how you establish trust on the keys, how you can identify which is the key that is being signed, and how you can put trust on the signatory. The point is that we have made clear that, or I believe we have made clear that this is not in the scope of the draft, but on the other hand, we make some comments because it's certainly relevant and is something that is important. So that includes a series of potential deployment patterns. So when you're talking about how to deal with the private keys, where they should live, and what happens when you have more than one signatory. And that connects with one of the things is about this reference implementation that we made at the hackathon. Originally, we went to Bangkok with the first one of the flavors that is based on microservices. The idea was that there were a number of services, and you can throw at it a piece of Jan and then get it signed, or the other way around, get it verified. Now we have come with that version for sure, and another version that uses a Kafka message broker. This is what we show at the hackathon. Basically, what you have is using different topics, you can verify and you can sign and verify and leave this. With the idea, as you can imagine, that is aiming at convergence with what is ongoing right now with Young Push and the connection with Message Broker. This is the first step. It's not the big message broker that is using for example, it's not applying schema validation, etc. But this is something that's we plan for the next stage. So first of all, well, this is about evolving the Kafka reference implementation to incorporate or converge with what's going on in the current defaults and trying to foster the adoption. Second, well, and the first thing in the list, and it's connected with those comments from Jan as well, is about getting ready for the big Jan review from the Jan doctors. All definitions are not available, but before going for that, Anna, that is helping me with this, and myself would like to go for a first internal consistency check before we ask the Jan doctors. So please wait a little bit till we consider it ready. And finally, it's about the trust model, something that as well we receive as a request, as an original request that to us, it's saying, well, it could be a nice feature, but it's not needed. But it's true, and discussing with that gentleman that is standing behind the mic, it was clear that having multiple signatories is something that is important from the very beginning. So this is something that in the discussion we had during the hackathon helped us in understanding this. So now we have to think how to do it, because there is a construction in COSI on the one hand, but it can be complicated to align it with the trust model if we want to keep the trust model simple. And this is something that we have to think how we shape the whole thing. Precisely in relationship to identifying the right key, how you related the key with the signature, etc. So we have to think about it, but this is for the next one. And well, for sure, we keep working with the reference implementation, and we would like to, when we finish with the telemetry, to start considering the other application scenarios. Now I'm done. And we'll have...
Yes. Thanks a lot, Diego. First of all, I need to applaud the way how you integrated the COSE into the Young Push envelope extension. Perfect. That's how it should be. And you were just mentioning before about, so we have at NMOP the network telemetry message schema, where we were using from OPSAWG the platform manifest, which basically there are two groupings. One is for the Young Push publisher, and the other one is for the Young Push receiver. And yes, basically, since we are augmenting information on the data collection, so adding additional information, it would be amazing to have that there as well.
Does it? Well, actually, the platform manifest is the origin of all this, because it comes from discussions with Jan and others about how you establish the. Well, Benoit may remember about this, and you, and that's something that, and for sure, this is something that, as I said, we were asked about that, and we thought that it was an exotic requirement, but it's not exotic at all. So we need to address it.
Perfect. Thanks a lot.
Yep.
Other comments? Because I have a chair question. Listening to what you were saying around, and especially around the last bullet, experiment and validate all referenced application scenarios. The way I heard it, it sounded like you plan to continue to evolve this. I got the impression that maybe the scope might continue to grow on this, and there might not be a done state in your head.
No. I mean, personally, what is in the draft is the type and the foreign closing method.
Okay.
That's it. Then it's about applications that can be considered in other, for example, in the previous session, what Beno, right? ESCO. Yeah. What ESCO was presenting made me think that, for example, this is something that could be applicable after to co-op and everything, but this would be a different document.
Okay.
In my mind, at least, it's clear that the document needs to go to clarify the Jan structure. We need to clarify about enclosing method 1, to be clear that we are referring to augmenting and not anything else. And we need to deal with this. I think that the real technical stuff is about the multiple signatures. When this is done, I would say that
Okay.
it's done.
That helps me. Thank you.
It was also somehow my question about 3 applications there. You mentioned that you focus on the first one.
Yep.
So for the second one and third one, there is nothing to be changed, just a use case, right?
Exactly, it's like use cases. Okay. Yeah, that's it. That's why I was, yes. The only thing is that we plan to bring these scenarios to show them at the hackathons if everything goes as is planned. Yeah, that's it. Thank you.
Thanks, Jay. Hi, everyone. So just an update of where we're at. And I wanted to do a recap over where we are, but also how we got here. So our focus has really been driven by, I think, the inadequate state of the current definition of packet discard reporting. And we've certainly experienced this at scale. So IF in discards, IF out discards, IF in errors, IF out errors are ambiguously defined and also inconsistently implemented. And as a result of that, what we saw was, in many cases, packet loss not being reported, or even where it was reported, it wasn't reported in a way where you could differentiate intended discards from unintended discards. So that was really the goal, was to fix that problem. And that was the impetus for the draft. What we have is and I'll touch on the information model, data model, but the draft currently has an information model and a data model in Yang. If we go through the history, we started just with an information model. We did an information model because discard reporting is not just, it's not just based upon the interface or on the device, but it can also be based on the flow. So it can apply both to Yang and to IPFix. So because of that, we started with an information model so that we weren't data model specific. We then started with that as a tree. Then, because it was, I think, a better way to define it, we moved to a Yang-based information model, which I think was a much clearer way of doing it. That also then enabled lossless transformation into a Yang-based data model. So by the time we got to 05, the draft contained a Yang-based information model and a Yang-based data model. And I'm going to touch on what the data model covered and what it didn't cover in a slide or two. So the information model, I think the key part about that was using the RFC 8791 data structure extensions to essentially to be able to define the information model abstracted from the data model, but to allow that lossless transformation. And I think that's something that's that's since been proposed into the RFC 5706 bis. From the information model, what's required actually to get to an implementation? Practically, what we see across different hardware platforms is from anywhere from 64 to 256 different underlying discard counters, which are not exposed generally. A mapping is required from those to a classification scheme, the information model, and then we need a means to expose that. So in terms of the information model, we know of at least 8 different hardware implementations across 4 different vendors, and I've listed them there. So that's basically saying that those platforms have what's needed in the hardware to be able to take underlying detailed discard counters and map them to the information model. Okay, so that's a proof point that the capability exists in hardware in order to be able to do that. I do know of two others in progress, in addition to the 8 listed. Then we get to the data model. So the information model describes the ability to be able to represent discards at an interface level, which is, I think is obvious and we're all familiar with. Also at a device level, some platforms, by the time they make the drop decision, they've lost sight of where the interface is. So they can still report the discard, but they might not report it specific to an interface. And we need to allow for that as well. There's a lot more centralized forwarding platforms out there, or single ASIC forwarding platforms. In addition, we can have traffic to or from the control plane. In addition, we can have traffic discarded at a flow level. So we defined those 4 components. So interface level reporting, device level, flow level, and control plane. The Yang data model describes defines the implementation for interface, device, and control plane, not for flow. We have one reference implementation which we've open sourced, of the data model, which is a Slack script based implementation for a Juniper MX. If anybody wants to try that and provide feedback, please do. And then we also submitted an initial draft of showing a possible way that you could represent the information model as an information element in IPFix. And the approach we took was pretty simple. I think Benoit's got some feedback on it. But what we did was we took all of the leaves of the information model and we indexed them, and we translated that, or we just translated that into an information element, but we deduplicated on anything that already existed as an information element in IPFix. Now, I think discussing with Jeff today, I think another way of doing that, which is perhaps clearer, is not to do the deduplication, and I think we can go anywhere with those. This is a 0.0, just a name draft. If there's anybody on the IPFix side that wants to work with us on this, I'd be very happy for that. So just let me know. So that's pretty much the summary of how we got to where we are. As of today, with one exception, we've addressed all of the received comments, and I guess the question which instigated Benoit's opening statements was around whether or not we're ready for last call and what we need to do to get there. Any questions?
Mahesh speaking as a contributor. So thank you, first of all, for this work, because we have had our own customers come to us asking for clarification on trying to figure out where in the system do we report a particular kind of data being discarded. So I was going through the tree diagram, and I was trying to figure out the particular case where in QoS, because of policing, the packet is dropped. And I was trying to figure out where in the model it kind of fits. I know you don't have the tree diagram handy, but if the idea is that the packet is discarded because there was some policing policy that was set for that particular interface.
That's under policy, and then under policy there's an explicit branch for policing.
All right.
Thank you.
All right, so some feedback. This is actually an important document because we take for the first time an information model in Yang, which we use as a data model. So to me, it was a very important one. Now I was waiting until we would have the IPFix data model, and I wanted to review all of them at the same time. So you're asking for help on IPFix, but what is your plan? Because the last time I looked at the IPFix one, it was not ready yet. So
I think we could decouple them, Benoit, because I think the question on IPFix is how you represent the information model in IPFix, not in a change to the information model for the discard reporting. So I think it's more that translation that's the question. So I think two things. I think one, if there's more feedback on the Yang model draft, would be gratefully received. But the other is, I think the IPFix the IPFix document does need some work. So if there's a contributor on that, be very much appreciated.
So as chair, what we understand is that you would like to complete this first, and then IPFix as something.
A follow-on, yeah.
A follow-on.
Yeah.
Okay, good.
Yeah, Monica, as a contributor, actually, it's exactly on the same question. I wanted to understand the rationale or the motivation why you think that we need to delay, I would say, the informational about the IPFix before and couple them, just to understand the point.
It's not that we have to delay, but to me, what is important, I mean, we speak about knowledge graph everywhere, right? What is a knowledge graph? It's about linking information. So to me, the point was that if we had devices who have your private implementation or this Yang implementation or receiving with IPFix, I was thinking that to me, what would be very nice is that I would be able to show in IPFix, this is how you design your flow with key fields, non-key field to make sure that you've got the same information as data model. So this is this review I wanted to do. So to me, there are 3 parts: information model, data model 1, data model 2. And I was waiting to get all of these 3 to start reviewing. But now I understand that IPFix is like phase 2 or companion.
Yeah, actually, it's not the beta, but it's the plan here is that the existence of the informational model, this is actually the guarantee that to link the other information. All the data model, that's the bet. That's why I said the bet. So if all the, for example, if the IPFix is just to go to the informational model and keep the flow or whatever specific data items that are there to do their encoding, we ensure by design that we have the appropriate correlation between the various data models. That's actually the technical rationale we followed this, and I think it sounds. But again, the other document is for me is still individual one. If we have, I would say, comments, feedback, and so on, this will help, I would say, just shape it. But I don't see any reason there to delay this work because we already have, I would say, the informational model as a way to ensure that correlation.
I get that. So analysis is perfectly fine rationale. Just to come on an IPFix, there are 2 fixes in IPFix. You could have the information elements and say job done, or there is the second part, which is how you're going to have your metering process to actually map the information model. And this is what I was going for.
Jeff Hasen, that's exactly the point that I came up here for. What we're looking at is how do we actually take a leaf that is an information model and canonically represent it inside of the IPFix no schema. The version that's in the draft right now, it does have some level of ambiguity. We've talked about that a little bit and have some thoughts on it. Certainly an easy option is to pick something like the CBOR style of allocated tag to each leaf. And that brings us to interesting dependency question of, do we want to tag this into the data model as a way of doing that? I know we've had that conversation for CBOR. Other options might be things we haven't talked about yet. If there's been work in IPFix to actually do some sort of equivalent like of ASN1 path, that is very similar for XPath type stuff, that would be worth considering as well. If we're defining new ground, let's not try to define too much new ground.
Holger?
Holger Keller, DT. I'm coming back to Maher's question regarding QoS drops, and if I got it right, by policy, right? And if I look into the model, under policy, there's no QoS leaf mentioned. QoS is under no buffer.
We need to define what we mean by QoS. So there are buffer discards. So if we're talking about queuing, they're defined. Okay. Then we have which is congestive loss rather than an explicit policy from a policer. So they're in separate parts of the tree.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. But happy to take feedback. Thanks.
One last question, and I've never been thinking about that. Now, you might want to request an early Yang doctor review. And is there anything to tell to the Yang doctors, this is an information model in Yang? Is there anything special about it in the way they should be reviewing it? And I have no idea.
So there was a Yang Doctors review of the information model prior to the data model.
Oh, okay. I forgot about that.
And we addressed we incorporated those comments in the updated information model. There hasn't been any review of the data model.
To be clear, yeah, an information model in Yang was new. I wanted to understand, like, what did the Yang doctors think about this? And there was some feedback given. And
I think that was at the point of we were
yeah,
information
how are we
model,
going to,
not
yeah,
information
exactly,
model and data
exactly.
model. Yeah. Okay. Any more for any more? No? Thank you.
And just following on this while you were saying, so John, you would like to get a Yang Doctor review at this point in time? Okay, the answer is. All right, translating for the microphone. One more revision and then maybe Yang Doctor review. Okay, good.
Yeah, hello. This is an update about the Epifix alternate marking information elements. I'm presenting on behalf of the co-author. Yeah, just a quick recap about the scope of this simple document. So it simply requests IANA to create new elements under the Epifix information elements registry. So with alternate marking, each node need to export telemetry data at each period of the monitored flow. And it is needed a combination of existing and new information elements to reach this scope. So the existing information elements are source address, destination address in order to have the 5 tuple. The new information elements to complete the information are flowmon ID as specified in the RFC 9343, loss flag, the delay flag, and period number. In the new version, after, let's say, the input from Benoit, we address a new section about the performance measurement consideration in order to explain, let's say, how these flow keys can be used. Basically, so the flow key are used to define the flow, and at minimum, they can be the flowmon ID, loss flag, and delay flag. But of course, the traditional 5 tuple can be combined with this information. So the new information elements can be used together with the well-known 5 tuple that is already defined as information elements. In terms of flow records, there are 2 different flow records that are needed, one for loss and the other for delay. For example, the flow record for loss can be composed by the 5 tuple, the flowmon ID, that is the flow monitoring, flow identification, and the loss flag. Of course, the period number and the packet count, that is another information element already defined. The flow record for delay measurement can be composed basically by the same, so the 5 tuple, the flowmon ID, the delay flag instead of the loss flag in order to have different flow records, the period number as well, and of course, in this case, we need the timestamp, so flow start microsecond and flow end microseconds. If we have, depends on the methodology, the marking methodology we are using here. All the nodes, the transit, marking and unmarking nodes can be exporters in order to export data. The loss and delay metrics are computed, of course, on the NMS that is acting as collector. We also had other editorial changes and naming changes in order to keep aligned with the Yang model draft. What are the next steps? We are preparing for the working group last call. It is worth noting that there are also companion documents in IPPM that are also progressing. The Yang model for configuration and the telemetry Yang for telemetry for using Yang push, and we are also aligning the terminology and the naming of the parameters in order to be congruent. So comments are of course welcome. Thank you.
Comments? when do you think, do you have another revision or plan for before a working group last call?
Let's see. Depends also if we receive other feedback. I think now in terms of, so the document looks stable. So I don't know if additional clarification is needed or not. So
Okay.
it's up to the working group to decide. So
I don't remember. I guess I could look real quick. Did we have a shepherd assigned for this yet?
not
Okay.
yet. Not yet.
Okay. Yeah, well, another way working group members can participate, sign up to be a shepherd. Or if you have any suggestions, but yeah, we'll look to find someone, and then we'll see what the working group says before taking it to last call.
Okay. Thanks.
Thanks.
It's okay. Hi, everyone. I'm Victor Lopez from Nokia. I'm very glad to be here in my hometown and speaking to you about this update about the DJAM model to schedule sequences of OEM tests. So the main update that we've done from the 0.0 version to the version 1, it is to clarify the scope and the use case that we are willing to tackle with this document. And essentially what we want to do with this document is to manage an OEM test, create it and schedule it on an SDN controller. So essentially the SDN controller can create the configuration on the different tests in a periodic manner, if this is the intent of the operator, run the test, and once the test is finished, clean up the configuration, and then repeat the process or whatever it is. In parallel to this, also the operator is interested on getting the status of the OEM test. So this is the other addition that we've done in the other part of the problem that we want to solve. What we don't want to do on this draft is to redo JAM models about OEM, but we want to reuse the IETF schedule and all the OEM models that are already part of the different working groups in IETF. To be more concrete with the updates that we've done from the 0.0 version to the 0.1, we got feedback in the mailing list. We opened 21 issues and we've covered 13 of them. And I've tried to summarize them in blocks so this way the presentation can be easier. So we've clarified the draft scope and the usage, as I was commenting before. One of the comments that we got, for example, it was about collision and conflicts that you can have when you are going to start the OEM test. So we've documented that, well, there could be overlapping configuration during the creation of the test. That's something that the controller cannot prevent in advance. And also, we've done just a minor model improvement, clarifying some of the input parameters, adding config faults to some operational state that we mess up. I think Joe and Benoit realized about it, so thank you for that. And some editorial and reference fixes in order to clarify, well, some of the documents that were normative, other they were part of the standard track, and we didn't address it properly. So what we are willing to do as a next step, we got many contributions from Chingu, and we are discussing about a proper update of the YAM model, that this is something I'm not presenting to you today. And what we want to do is to close this discussion that we have, share it into the mailing list, get your feedback, and based on the feedback, make another improvement before the next IETF in Montreal. And in parallel to that, the other work we have to do is there has been changes in the netmod in the schedule YAM, and also with the characterization OEM document that it was presented before. And we have to revisit the whole draft to align with the final nomenclature and the updates in the draft. And this is the plan that we have. And I don't know if there is any question.
While people rush on the queue, I've got one feedback. So you mentioned nomenclature, right? So your draft is full of OEM. we've been discussing a draft about terminology for OAM. What would be a good thing is that you could review that draft, see if it fits, because I was checking in the references. It's not even informative. So that could be a good thing. So it comes back to the previous point we made, reviewing each other document, right? And if you do that and the OAM characterization people are very happy, maybe they will review your draft.
No, that maybe I thought it was already. I already include the reference. It is at least on the open issues. Yeah, it's something I might do for sure. Yeah,
Perfect.
Thank you.
Rashad.
Thanks. This is Rashad from Equinix. So I just took a look at the doc. I hadn't looked at it for a while. So first thing I have to say, I was pleased to see the references to the Lime docs. I think Benoit, who was AD then, must be pretty happy. Secondly, have you given any thought how templates, I don't know if you followed the template stuff in NetMod, because I can imagine you got hundreds, thousands of nodes, and you want to have stuff depending on role, depending on where the devices are in the network.
So essentially, the discussion and what we are not agreeing, even among the authors, is either if we should use a schema mount to expose in the northbound interface dynamically the configurations that we want to use, or the other option it will be to go for templates. I was talking with Rob the other day, and it could be applicable to use the templates, and they can be, what we can have is essentially the calendaring, the status of the test, and a template that you want to send to the network. So we are debating about the two approaches, and this is the part that we are struggling to really make it happen. Something that maybe we can do is, if we keep not agreeing among the three of us, what we can do is to set it in the list and get the feedback from all of you and see which is the best approach, either to go with a schema mount or use the templates in the APIs.
Okay, thank you.
I guess /chair/contributor. I think great getting the working group feedback on that. I wonder what it would do from a dependency standpoint and what that would do to the planning of the work if templates were used. Would it require, must use, or would it be something you could do in addition to other reference points, or have this work stand alone, I guess?
So I think part of this work requires a solution to have a target configuration. No? And the templates can be a way to express this target configuration that the operator is willing to send. In this context, it will be for the creation of an OEM test. So yeah, if there will be a dependency with the template work, but if this is the best, let's say, technical approach, we can wait for it to be concluded and later reopen it.
Thanks.
Thank you.
See if I can do this right this time.
And the export of SRv6 pass segment modifier in IPFix. Yeah.
Hello, everyone. This is Yao Liu from ZT, and the presentation is about export of SRv6 path segment identifier information in IPFix. So when we are monitoring traffic flow in the SRv6 network, a typical question is how many packets are traversed along a certain SR path, and which SR path is it? So when we look at the existing information elements defined for SRv6 segment list, so we have two in the existing RFC 9487. But both information elements encode the segment list in the SRH, starting from the segment list 0. But the whole segment list in the SRH is not always the best key identifier. For example, when there are many sets in the list, so the IPFix message would be large, so it makes it harder to parsing and processing. And if different SR policies use the same segment list for traffic steering, or when the first set is not present in the SRH in the reduced mode. So in this case, the same segment list is in SRH is for different SRv6 policies, and the segment list in SRH is the same. So it is difficult to distinguish it. So, and if the SRH contains compressed set, so you have, you need to have additional processing procedures to obtain the original segment list before compression. So, what is the SRv6 path segment ID? And it is defined in Spring. So to identify an SRv6 parse, it is encoded as the last entry in the segment list in SRH with the SRHP flag set. And it is a concept accepted, and some vendors has implemented in the data plan. So the concept in this, the idea in this draft is simple. We defined a new information element for the SIHPS ID. It is a 128-bit IPv6 address that represents an SRv6 PSID. So when to operate the network, so the metering process needs to understand the P flag to get the PSID, and the analysis node should be aware of which SR parse the PSID identifies. And we present this draft in last IETF, both in OPSAWG and Spring. So we have received some positive comments. And after last IETF, we have some updates. Of the first, the titles is changed, so to make the theme more focused. And we add a use case, as we mentioned before. So the SR parse identification for the SRv6 compression scenario is added. And we've sent the updated version to both OPSAWG and Spring's list for review. And welcome feedbacks and comments. And we think it is a quite simple and straightforward draft. So we request the working group to consider adoption. That's all. Thank you. Thomas?
Hello. Thomas, yeah. First of all, I think this is very useful. Like I remember when I was testing compressed SID, basically when the segment routing header, you have the SID container, but also in the IPv6 destination address, you have the SID container, and especially on the IPv6 destination address, basically by each segment, the address is changing, and therefore identification is very difficult. So by introducing now the path segment identifier, it's much more easier, and especially now if you're integrating that as well on IPFix, I think that's a very good idea. Thanks a lot.
Oh, thank you for your feedback. Thank you.
Yeah, we already have a expression of support in addition to Thomas's in the chat, but we figure we got some time. This is interesting work to adopt. So we'll run a poll. Who thinks this is interesting work to adopt in the room and online? Yes, you think this is interesting, we should adopt this. No, you don't, we shouldn't. And no opinion, you haven't read the draft or you haven't formed an opinion yet. Let's see, we have 53 people online, so I don't know what no answer means. That's, oh, really? Ah, I'm looking at total at the participants in the room, but you're right, 41 in the.
While people are answering the poll, I want to say that with those type of IPFix document, as you said, they're straightforward, right? So they just need to have reviews now. So they're simple documents, I want to say.
They are, and they do fit in our new shiny charter. So absolutely, I'm just curious to know what the people present think of, or if they've read the work and they find it valuable. But But it sounds like at least there's no one objecting, so this is something we could consider and bring to the list for adoption.
Thank you. Thank you.
I think it's Thomas next.
And again, IPFix. Maybe you want to change the workgroup name.
Yeah.
So yes, I'm gonna bore you again with yet another IPFix document today. This time it's about passive optical networks. So for those of you who don't know what a passive optical network is, at home you might have a CPE. For those of you who are not living in a developed country, maybe there is also some optical fiber connected to that CPE. That's the so-called ONT part on the picture. So that's this part here. While on the opposite side, on the service provider side, there is the OLT, and in between there are optical splitters. So here it's about bringing visibility into the optical distribution network. And there is an encapsulation, and usually when there is an encapsulation, IPFix is not that far. So in the encapsulation, we have a so-called GEM header, and those are 4 entities in this GEM header. So we have on the on-side the payload length indicator, we have the port ID, we have the payload type indicator, and we have the header error control. Only the middle two, the port ID and the PTI, are actually interesting for statistical purposes. And therefore, here, these are the 2 IPFix entities which we are proposing. So the first, for the GPON GEM PTI, we are having an on-site 8, while on the GPON GEM port ID, we have an on-site 16. Now, for the PTI, there is an existing registry at the ITOT in a document, and we clarified whether there is a dedicated ITOT registry. There is not. So basically, the values which I'm listing here are part of that ITOT document, and we were reaching out with Paul Aitken, the IPFix doctor, and also Amanda Barber on the IANA side. What is the best approach here? And we decided to create in the IPFix a new registry, and also aligned basically how what's the role of the designated expert in here. Now, to explain a bit the use case, so if we take the OLT, so the OLT has basically upstream to the core network, usually Ethernet. So in Ethernet, we have, for instance, VLANs, and in VLANs, we have classes of services. So we have QoS and VLAN properties separated, while in the GEM header, basically those are combined in a so-called GEM port ID. So basically we're bringing now visibility, not only that basically we understand from which MAC address to another MAC address communication is happening, but also we understand on which GEM port ID, so therefore we take also the class of service and also the VLAN information into context. And that's especially on the OLT interesting. With that, we can correctly verify whatever the mapping ingress from the GEM header towards the Ethernet side, that mapping is correctly happening. And together with the MAC address, we can basically down to the ONT to the customer doing the flow correlation. So we published the first version in April, had then a presentation at CCamp where those optical topics are being discussed, and we got good feedback from there. A second revision includes already feedback from Paul and from IANA, and we are planning an implementation on an OLT and also an IETF hackathon verification. We like to have more feedback from the group and looking forward for a working group adoption. And one last item is whether we should reach out to ITOT for a liaison or whether it's not needed. Or yeah.
On on that last question, I don't know. I mean, is Scott? That's something we could check on to see. We'll, just like we did on the last one, let's see. Show of hands. Sorry.
Hey.
Just a comment on this. Since this doesn't impact the architecture, I don't see why ITOT. I mean, because we're not adding anything or changing anything, just, but.
Exactly. So what I understood is on liaison, there are liaisons like kind of an information.
Yeah.
We could just send an information out and say, hey, we do the IP fix part.
So it's a matter of politeness in that sense. But that's the other point that is, I'm not sure because I'm not so familiar with that, but there is another group that is called the Broadband Forum, the BBF.
Yeah.
And I know that they are doing things like monitoring and remote management of this kind of GPON. So might be that they could be interested, or even that they have some, or thinking about or implementing another solution that could be.
That's correct. I'm actually part of the Broadband Forum. That's the BNDC WT508, and my intent is also to bring that to the Broadband Forum. Yes. Good point.
I've got one question for the room. I don't remember if whenever we've been defining IP fix information elements that are from a different SDO, if we actually did a liaison. Does someone recall if we ever did? Defining IP fix information elements that are somehow from a different SDO. All right. Thanks, though. Time for the poll.
So it's the same poll, and to I think, yeah, maybe as a politeness reach out, it might be useful. But we'll check with Scott and see what the protocol there is. So same poll. If you've read it and you think this is worth adopting, yes. If you don't think it's worth adopting, no. And if you haven't read it, haven't formed an opinion, no opinion. Seems like this is another one Benoit was showing me from a timeline perspective. This is very similar to the other SRv6 document. It looks like it could be fairly straightforward for adoption if we think we can get the reviews.
Matt, there was like the IP fix on GTP. Didn't we have a liaison to the 3GPP just for that?
Yes, I guess it was only specific to that draft, yeah.
All
I
right.
think we have to do the same for this one, but not for 3GPP, but for, I would say, at least for the BBF.
All right, so that makes sense then to be, again, polite and then apply similar rules. Thanks.
Okay, so pretty much as it's quieted down, less numbers, but pretty much the same. There's no dissent, so we can take this to the list as well and see what the working group feels from an adoption standpoint. Thank you, Thomas. I think now we're on to Eric. Yes.
To worry about time? You'll ping me about time. Hello, my name is Eric Klein. Thank you very much for making some time today. I happened to mention to Med that I had found bears and attachment circuits stuff useful for something, and he told me I should put some slides together and present them here. So thank you again for the opportunity. I work for a company called Illyria. We do a variety of satellite space networking connectivity things. I work on a temporospatial SDN team called the Spacetime team. So when you have a terrestrial network, usually somebody has run some fiber from a cage to another cage, and maybe there was a ticket, and maybe it took 3 weeks, and who knows what else has happened. But when you start to have steerable beams and optical apertures that can be directed, you suddenly have a choice of topologies that you could build that you now need to factor in when you're going to try to connect one or more networks, or even create connections within a network. And so steerable beams create new dynamic interconnection opportunities. And when things are not only steerable, but moving as they're steerable, then you have many, many, many more options to choose from when you want to build a topology. It's pretty common for orbital constellations to use infrastructure from other networks. It's very common for Earth observation satellites to not, for the administrative network that operates a Earth observation satellite or network of satellites to not own the ground station infrastructure, so they borrow that. And so there are ground station as a service APIs that have been around for a little while. But often these things require significant pre-planning. There may or may not be spreadsheets involved. There's probably email and humans clicking buttons, things like that. So, but if we have all of these things moving dynamically and we have some helpful APIs, certainly maybe we can dynamically build bearers and attachment circuits to connect things on orbit at the speed at which they move. So Illyria with at the nonprofit Outernet Council, which is kind of like a Linux Foundation type nonprofit. We've been working on this Federation Interconnect API. The API is network orchestrator to network orchestrator. It was, some part of it was inspired by the ACAS work and friends. To be clear, all of the good work was done by David Mandel and other engineers, and all of the misunderstandings and mistakes are undoubtedly mine. We did our work in gRPC because we use protobufs in gRPC. There's a V1 alpha version on GitHub. And to be clear, sort of this is the problem we're trying to solve. The model here is that there are network orchestrators on the ground for 2 different network domains, and that there's a out-of-scope control plane between those orchestrators and the things they're going to try to make connect. So Federation API happens, interconnection API happens on the ground, and then there's the out-of-scope control plane activity, and then hopefully interconnectivity in flight. And so the secret of this bearer and attachment circuit talk is that most of the work happens before you can even get to bearers and attachment circuits. In this API, the client requests of a provider network several things in order, and the first thing it does is it tries to create a model of a transceiver in that provider network's system. This includes passing all of the physical parameters. It includes passing orbital information. It includes modcods and various other things that you need at the PHY layer in order to understand whether or not you have anything that could connect to this transceiver. And so in theory, a provider network could now begin to compute whether or not it can offer contact windows. And then the second thing that happens is the client network can call list contact windows. I'm eliding several details here, but in general, you can stream a series of intervals over which the transceiver could possibly connect to the service provider's network. And the contact windows have all of the PHY layer parameters necessary to point an aperture, close a link. It might include additional orbital information for the thing you're pointing at, so you can keep track of your motion relative to the thing you're pointing to. This is what goes into your request to create a bearer. You choose a contact window, you can create a bearer. And of course, I'm assuming that there are no errors here. There are many error paths. And at this point, you have a bearer that you can build on top of and request an attachment circuit. And because it's all gRPC protobuf APIs, you can update an attachment circuit with a new bearer. So you can continue to call list contact windows, create new bearers, and then update an attachment circuit with a new bearer with the idea that you're continually moving your request for backhaul across a provider network from one dynamic interconnection to another continuously. We have a couple of partners with whom we have been working to demonstrate this. If you have a satellite constellation that you want to point at another thing, let me know. That would be fun. So yeah, that's what that is. The bearer circuits and attachment stuff is very much ACAS. So, or at least we tried to make it that. Thank you.
I don't have a satellite constellation yet. However, did you find anything in the work that you feel like if we start to rev, BIS, some of the attachment circuit work, was there anything that you thought could be different, better, that you would have needed, would have been ideal?
The main difficulty here is all of the coordination of the possible connectivity elements. So the things that would be necessary to even like establish a bearer. I found all of the bearer stuff and the attachment stuff to be useful and comprehensible, and mostly they want to request, our customers anyway, want to request like an L2 service or an L3 service. So that's all pretty normal and understandable. To be clear, there's no like, there's no peering. Nobody has the idea that they're going to exchange a bunch of routes for a 2-minute contact window and then try to move things around. That's not the expectation. There are some Yang models for file layer things, and there's even a Yang model for location and for motion. I think I haven't looked at assembling all of those things together because we had a history from operating on Loon about a decade ago to keep track of all the stuff and to represent the stuff in a data model. But yeah, if there was something that was missing, I would definitely bring it up.
Keep in mind the Onion potential future working group, just for all these network and services Yang model and how they work together.
Yeah, yes, Med told me about that.
I'm sure he did.
Nice, thank you very much.
Thanks, sir.
All right.
Oh, I didn't. I need to go do the thing.
Sorry.
Should I go get in the queue? All right.
Just go and state your
Okay,
name.
so yeah, hi, Dave Synecrope Erickson. I am not Scott Mansfield, but I am channeling him. By text message, he said, yes, in the prior draft, you want to let question 2 of study group 15 know, and so an informational liaison would be appropriate.
Thank you.
Very good.
All right. I'm here to actually discuss, not really present. So I want to emphasize that actually, how much time do I have for this discussion?
Well, technically 10 minutes, but we have 30 minutes and this can blend into open mic. So
okay,
just let her rip.
All right. So
and you just purchase your time with the bottle.
All right. So this is something Matt and I have been discussing at the leadership level also, and I'll get into that below. So, so what is the problem statement we're going after? This is a result of the AnyMaps workshop that the IAB put together, and in section 3.4.4, they put together some standardization conclusions. 2 things that I wanted to highlight out of that. One was an ask for some rapid model development. And a data point regarding that, the last time we had to rev a BFT Yang module with maybe around 3 or 10 lines of code. It took a year. So when we say rapid, we really mean rapid, not just years. The second statement was really what will it take for the Yang modules to live outside the published RFC? So that's the discussion. I just want to frame that. So a couple of observations. They're mostly mine. Feel free to contradict them. The question is the delay really in the development of the model? My own assertion is really that is not where most of the delay is. Most of the delay seems to be coming to a consensus. And part of that reason for what I believe is why we have that delay is the pursuit for what I consider the perfect model. And maybe in addition, the fear of making backward compatible changes. I think, well, I'm here to tell you that we are not perfect. We are going to make mistakes, not because we want to, but because either we don't understand or maybe the technology changes on us and therefore we have to change the model. A corollary to that assertion is that RFC 7950 suggests a way to make non-backward compatible changes, but I would suggest that sometimes it really doesn't work, or mostly it doesn't work. So I'm hoping that the module versioning work and the assembler work that is going on is going to help us to boldly go where we have not gone before, which is make those changes in a non-backward compatible fashion. So those are observations from a process perspective. These are observations if you look at our Yang module, it's ultimately code at the end of the day. It's typically developed outside of an RFC in some kind of source control mechanism using tools that are not typically used to develop an RFC. It needs CI/CD pipeline. Ideally, it could use some CI/CD pipeline to be able to validate the model. All this goes to say that the tools that we use today are tools to insert the model into an RFC so that people can review it, but it's actually consumed outside the RFC. So everything we do is primarily for people to review. So the question is there another way to get that review done? So the Uber question we're trying to answer is, what if these Yang models are managed where they're actually developed? And can the RFC point to that stable pointer in some location? I think that's the question we want to try to see if we can answer. So Ahmed and I brought this up with the leadership. They were generally supportive of the idea, but they had questions. So in the next set of slides, I'm going to put up some of those questions and I'll try to go through them. And that's where I hope most of this discussion lands. So,
real quick, you have one Balash in the queue. Do you want to take questions now or just wait till the end of your section here?
Okay. I mean, not till the end, but let me get to the questions.
Okay.
And that would be a good time to start this discussion.
Okay.
Thanks, Balaz. I hope that's okay with you. All right. So the leadership questions were mostly about, well, if the Yang module is going to live outside of the RFC, how is new work going to be proposed? What will the work group adopt? Will it adopt a repository? Will it adopt a draft? How does the work group stay engaged? And so on and so forth. You can read those questions. I don't want to read them here. Okay, so I'm going to make a couple of assertions standing here, and I would like a discussion around it. So how is the new work going to be adopted? My suggestion is that it's going to be adopted much like today in the form of a draft, which will describe normatively and in text format using maybe tree diagrams and snippets of code what the model is about. However, the Yang module will not necessarily be in that RFC. At best will be not at best, there will be a pointer from the draft to a location. And we can discuss where that location should be, but the general idea is that's where that will be outside the RFC. So let me pause there and take my first question from Balaz.
Yeah, I think there's one more strong use case for moving the models out of the RFCs. When Yang models in the RFC has a problem, then it is very difficult to update that model. The errata is not so well known, and also which revision date of that model will be valid, where to display the updated model. Thank you.
All right, I have an opinion, but I guess I'm going to wait to get other people to speak.
Rob Wilton, Cisco. So I think the issue here I think it's great to try and get the Yang out of the RFCs. That's a good thing to do, and the drafts. I think if you then put the tree diagrams back into the drafts, you put them back into lockstep again, as in every time you update the Yang model, you have to go back and update the draft. And in that case, you might as well put the Yang module back in the draft again. You haven't really gained anything. So I think you need the tree diagrams to also be separate. And when I was sort of proposing this, what I was suggesting is that the draft and what ends up in the RFC describes the model at quite a high level abstract way. So it describes the sort of key sections and key fields you might find in that, but everything else is then deferred to be in the Yang model. And the tree diagrams, you have some tooling that whenever you update the Yang module, it just generates a new tree diagram and populates it somewhere on a web page or in the GitHub repository, use a GitHub action or something similar. But I think it's key that the draft and the RFC and the Yang models that go with them are quite heavily decoupled. And so you can make smaller changes to the Yang models without needing to update or reopen the RFC at all.
Okay, so I'll just put some context around that statement that I made, tree diagram. First of all, I was not referring to the entire tree diagram. It's usually parts of the tree diagram that you want to use to explain what the model is trying to do. And if you're going to really change the model enough to require that tree diagram to be updated in the draft, then I would suggest that that would be done whether you're doing it for the purposes of having an updated tree diagram, or it could be because you want to update the prose in the document itself.
But if your draft describes, even using snippets of the tree diagram, if it covers the whole of the Yang module, then unless you're making trivial changes to the Yang model like description statements, everything else is going to change those tree diagrams. It's going to change it either through the type or adding or removing leaves or restructuring things. So again, you're back into lockstep again.
Okay, point taken.
Mahesh, Thomas. So it writes drafts describe the model. I think we should avoid duplication as much as possible. So in Yang models, we have descriptions, and we should not do that description in the draft itself again. So basically, the draft should only give a high-level description on the module, but each leaf, the descriptions, what is happening, should be within the model.
Okay, again, the clarification when I said describe the model, this is the high level description of the model can stay in the draft, but to your point, description statements absolutely will be and should stay with the Yang model.
Perfect.
Jeff has, and he's smiling at me for good reason. because I'm also one of the people dealing with the BFD module that took a year to change a few lines because I found the bug. I'm also one of the editors with a certain person standing at the microphone of a 225-page internet draft containing Yang modules. So we have a little bit of an opinion about these sort of things. One of the things that is worth pointing out from that, exercise is that some of the reason there's a level of success is that we have a tool set that lets us actually build the modules, build the draft within a Git repository checkout where the models are maintained separately, where the text is maintained separately, and the thing stitches it all together. So there is a path forward where the actual model and the text that generates the draft can live in the same repo and through a CI/CD style process generate artifacts that can be fed back into the process. And part of the headache we have is, like we had as a discussion at working group chairs earlier this week, GitHub is not something that everybody is going to use, so we have to figure out what the desired workflow is to let the rest of IETF see the sausage being made out of this mess. This is doable, but it's going to change rather what we do. And that's not necessarily a bad thing because editing stuff of 225 pages worth of Yang and text in a single document and expecting any human to want to even vaguely look at this is ludicrous.
So James Cumming. So I'd like to kind of echo the comments that having the Yang files outside of the draft is very beneficial for lots of reasons. Very much agree with the idea that it can be moved back into a document in an automated fashion if you need everything in one place. There is some benefit in a level of stability in the drafts and the Yang models that we make. And so we need to find a way to make sure that kind of work in progress is very much separated from an approved final model. And the approved final model can then go into future work to make sure that we have a potentially using the packages work, an agreed package set for what the IETF delivers as models that work together.
So I take your comment about stability, and that's why I keep emphasizing a stable reference. And I think there are methods that we probably can explore. I believe a tagging mechanism is one way to make sure that you quote unquote get a stable reference. So just by having physically copying the text over doesn't necessarily make it stable. I'm saying from a code perspective, there are ways for us to capture a stable reference point.
Joe Clark as contributor. I support this work. I echo a little of what Jeff said. Given what the working group chairs at least read, having one of your requirements kind of hint must have CI/CD, there is going to need to be a lot of education in place to make people comfortable with doing this. Speaking as the banner holder for Yang catalog and the tooling there, extracting Yang modules from text is not an easy task. So I applaud this. I would say consider some kind of markup in ID format in the XML to RFC, the RFC standard that hints that this is a Yang module, because then it will be easy for tools like Yang Catalog to centralize all these Yang modules like it's doing today, so that people can download one repository, get all the modules, and test them more easily than having to go to hundreds of different repositories.
Okay.
So Yang module outside the RFC, absolutely. This has been a pain, what Joe mentioned just right now. Now, the Yang description, we started by having the Yang description inside the Yang module being just a couple of lines. Now I've seen an evolution where we start to put operational information in there, somehow duplicating what you have in a draft. So now let me go to the extreme. Why don't we have the tree structure in there? Why don't we have the draft explanation, sorry, the what we have in the text from the draft directly within the Yang module. So as a consequence, you don't have this issue of the mismatch between a document with a 3 and a revision and the Yang module. It's in there. It's generated within the Yang module. So whenever we do that, what's left with the draft? The use case, maybe some more information, etc. But we don't have the mapping issue.
Yeah.
And my last comment is that I would have liked to have this discussion with the entire ops area like 2 hours ago.
Well, okay. Maybe there's more socialization we continue to do.
I would like to just throw a weird idea in there. From experience developing very different other stuff, and starting out of the concept of Donald Knuth's literate programming, which said, well, okay, the code and the comment should be integrated and managed in an appropriate way. And kind of, I don't think that Donald Knuth's old tools would be applicable here, but kind of understanding, well, okay, taking the understanding that, well, okay, you are developing something that has formal language and that has prose, and there is an intimate relation there, kind of figuring out how to structure your source management system so that it can deal with both in conjunction. And well, okay, a 225 pages document with prose and formal language interspersed obviously would be cut down to some reasonable modules. And when you are going to find the 3 lines in the formal language that have the bug, well, okay, it is very likely that the related prose might also want a little bit of update. So, but of course, kind of the whole RFC management system would kind of not offer that at the moment, which does not completely negate the possibility going into such a direction. Well, okay, I'm not sure whether kind of this community would be doing it, but kind of, I think it's it's worth some consideration and do it somewhere at some time.
Ahmed Al-Hassani, Swisscom. So just want to add additional requirement here. We have also to consider the early adopters, as someone have to go a lot of time to implement some of these early drafts, Yang modules, having to go through text draft and try to copy the Yang module in the right way that is correct. It's tedious. It's very tedious, and make sure there's a lot of errors that I can do there, just copying things around, which is not more fun. So I like approaches where you have some tooling that allows you at the end of the day to take a Yang module separately, put it in the draft. So the people who are only knows how to deal with data tracker diffs can also see what's changed in the module. And the people who are more in the software engineering side who want to look at the GitHub diffs, they also can go check it out as well. So it's a very hard, like it has to be balanced on all sides, not only from a data tracker point of view, but also for the people who trying to implement this early, and we want more of them to implement it. So we need to make it sure that's easy for them as well.
So I want to just summarize some of the points, particularly the one from Jeff, that what he was referring to was the tool set is actually a Docker and a template for a Git repository that we have between, because Jeff and I have worked on
got a few of those models that literally does this, which is in the Git repository. Actually, we have a folder that keeps the Yang model separate from the draft. It only brings them together at the time of publication. So I think the natural next step is the only reason for inserting it, well, at least, again, it's my assertion. The only reason to insert it into the document is A, because we're trying to be compliant with the RFC process, at least satisfying the IETF requirement. But really, as Jeff pointed out, no one is going to read a 225-page model in a printed format. I think this is code at the end of the day, and it's meant to be consumed in a different way than an RFC is generally at all. Anyway, so go ahead, Jeff.
So one of the things I'd like to point out is, people should go ahead and browse one of those repos that we work on, because a way to look at it is we're doing, there's some sed and awk markup language in there, so to speak, that's doing all the includes of these things, along with the validations. If one were to take the HTML output that we get in our RFCs these days and picture, a little bit of modern wrapper on things, we're allowed to actually have controls inside of our HTML, You could actually collapse the models down from one of those includes. You could even have a HTML JavaScript enabled Yang browser that you could actually do stuff in there.
Mm-hmm.
And if we just simply take the drafts that we have, see here we get our lovely Yang diagram, which you can collapse or expand. Here you can have the actual module that you can collapse and expand. All of these extraction things go away if we take the markup that we're already doing and just simply expose it to the tooling. There is a short path from what we're currently doing to something that keeps the current format, if you want it, pulls it out, if you want it, and makes it a lot easier to use.
Valid point. All right. Somebody else in the queue? Go ahead, Balash.
I think we are diverging into two different problems. At least for us, the main problem is not during the RFC development. Yes, if you want to improve it, you're welcome. But that you cannot update a model without revving the RFC. And RFC development is very slow. So that's one reason why we are aiming for perfection, because we are afraid that updating it later will be very difficult because the RFC process is slow. And also, we can't correct errors because, you would need to update the RFC, and the RFC process is slow. So for us, the problem is that this linkage to the RFC, not during the development. Thank you.
All right. Fair observation. Okay, so with my AD hat on, I worry about what the leadership is going to think, and so I'm trying to minimize the disruption to the IETF publication process. So my suggestion is to start with saying, well, if we want to continue with the current IETF process, we adopt the draft, the prose part of it, and keep a reference from the draft to a repository. At least that's my suggestion. And it includes, as Jeff said, maybe tooling to enable pointing to a tree diagram that is also in the repository that is in sync with the model. And so anyway, let me stop there.
So I'm more keen of trying to break the IETF process here and trying to do something quite different. So we know that OpenConfig is doing a better job than IETF in terms of evolving their models. There are clearly some downsides to the approach that they're taking in terms of the rigor that the IETF brings and in terms of how quickly things change and how much peer review they get. So I think if we're still trying to pretend and get Yang models published somehow through the IETF process and RFCs, I think we're going to still be in exactly the same place. Nothing really breaks. Nothing really changes. We need to instead to decouple the lightweight evolution of the Yang entirely outside of RFCs. They don't get published as part of RFCs. And then when you get to a stable version, then you publish that. So you have an RFC that contains like a Yang package definition that lists these are the modules at this versions. This now is IETF version 1 or whatever. I would like to go even further than that and get those definitions and publications outside of RFCs. And it's just the description of what the Yang package contains is what's in the RFC, and everything else is out as code and soft references. So you don't reference a hard version of a module. It's just like, this is the names of the modules, this is where you find them, that sort of thing. And just decouple the two and get to the point where IETF realizes that it needs to publish things other than documents. It needs to actually manage code as code rather than trying to manage them as documents.
All right. So let me get to the rest of the questions. So how does the work group stay engaged? My suggestion is, if it's in the form of a draft and the draft is updating the references to the model, that it's ultimately the work group can follow that stable reference pointer to get to the model and see the changes, and that we worry about review comments being reflected back onto the work group mailing list, keep the current process in place for how it happens today. All right, Bilaz, let me get through it because I have a 5-minute warning. So let me get through the remaining. Who manages the repository? Again, RFC 8874 talks a little bit about how the GitHub should be used. My proposal is that the chairs should be the admins of the repository. They determine the consensus per RFC 2026, and tag version within the repository provides a stable reference for any draft. The authors, of course, continue to manage the changes by their creates, updates, and delete. And once a consensus is reached, that they are the ones that kind of manage they manage the contributions. Finally, the question still left would be, of course, tool sets that we would need to change, or we need to have what the source control mechanism should be. Again, my suggestion is that it should be under the control of ISG/shares, and I can't quite think of any data tracker tools quite as yet that we might need. All right, my final slide is next steps. Identify drafts for this experiment, and I believe I want to have a few volunteers that want to run through this experiment with whatever modifications we agree here. All right, questions?
I think you and myself have navigated a similar path in ETSI and 3GPP. We could learn from there, where we actually had development on a central repository and then just used predictable tags to provide permanent links that we could put into the document itself. So, yep, I would be happy to help with this. Thank you.
All right.
Rob Will, Cisco. An IETF document is currently defined as an RFC or an internet draft. So is there intellectual property considerations, issues around this? Sorry to be the fun police.
There is, and the IETF, the modules themselves do carry the copyright statement and in the model description itself. So I'm not, at least on the face of it, I don't think that's a big issue.
Okay.
I locked the queue given we have about a minute left, and I would want to encourage the working group. I know you brought this to the OPSAWG list, but I don't know that people really had a chance to comment there. So I would say please comment there, and I would also be willing to help with this. And sorry we didn't really have time for an open mic, but I think this was a great discussion, and I appreciate Mahesh and Med bringing this to us. And Benoit, you have any closing remarks? No? Okay, well, thank you everyone for coming to OPSAWG here at 123. We look forward to the updates. We have a few action items in the minutes, and we will see you all again in Montreal. Thank you.
That's actually what is in the draft, actually.